Ah, cyberspace.
It's the word we've got. Cyberspace is the word, we've got the word.
A contrived metallic world of flashing lights.
An invisible universe.
Cyberspace is a new kind of space.
It's a very lonely, very denuded, very sort of unhappy place.
Why should somebody buy a computer? Why should somebody enter cyberspace? Because you want to. If you don't want to, don't.
I do not view cyberspace as the salvation for humanity. I view it as a battlefield.
You're going to ask for it, you're going to interact with it, you're going to face it, you're going to collide with it, you're going to coalesce with it. That's going to make the difference.
Cyberspace. You can't avoid it these days. Cyberpunk, cybersex, everybody uses it and nobody actually knows what it means. It's all Greek to me. Cyber actually comes from a Greek word meaning to navigate. So cyberspace is like the oceans and the computer's like a ship. Cyberspace is the electronic space where computers and all things digital communicate. It's just behind the screens in video arcades and home computer games. It's what links the internet and lets your computer plug into thousands of other computers on the World Wide Web. Make a date on your portable phone and the call swims through cyberspace from here to Japan in fractions of a second. Kids now play with the white box on the table more than the black box in the corner.
Just hit the main menu button. Right.
You can play games and shop till you drop in the air with this Arcadia system on Virgin Airways. Soon you can surf the internet from your seat, joining 40 million other people and 200 million by the year 2000. But what if you're not wired? What if you haven't yet caught the wave with the other cyber surfers? Someone who has caught the wave is best-selling writer and convinced cyber surfer Douglas Adams.
I don't think anybody should feel, oh God, I'm going to get terribly left behind if I don't sort of go and inform myself and all this stuff. Either it interests you or it doesn't. Or it'll get to a point where you are tremendously aware of the need to do a particular thing, which you'll need to do in that way, and therefore, at that point, you're ready to go. If you go back to the science fiction of the 50s and 60s, it's all about the big computers that are going to take over the world and rule the world, and the man in the street was going to be very much subject to the mercy of the big computer. And we had completely the wrong idea. Of course, Thomas Watson, of course, head of IBM, also had completely the wrong idea. I mean, he famously commissioned a study to see how many computers the world was actually going to need, and the study came back and said it was going to be 6.
Nearly right, Thomas. You had only 250 million computers out. And instead of filling the office, the personal computer sits on your desk. But some people still aren't satisfied.
Computers are still really clunky, big, ugly, awkward things to use, and you have to be prepared to put in a bit of time and effort just to sort of get it to do the simplest thing. And we must remind ourselves of that, despite the fact we go on about how wonderfully capable they are. They're still very, very difficult and awkward to use. But gradually that'll cease to be the case.
Computers are already taking over the world of entertainment. They're the powerhouse behind the visual effects which have transformed the cinema. Effects which can make us believe anything is real. The art of illusion in the cinema began when the Lumiere brothers took their cine camera to a railway station in 1897. The first moving pictures had an immediate effect. As the train headed towards them, the audience headed for the exits to get out of the way. But in the early days, it was hard to get people to stay at all.
Early cinema, the Lumiere brothers' cinema, was thought to be a massively retrograde act compared to what theatre was at the time. Here was these small boxes with 20-odd seats and this flat image, which once you realised it wasn't going to, when you knew the train wasn't going to run over you, there wasn't a lot of point in going back for the third time. And they were also fire traps. It must have looked like a very, very short-term investment. In fact, you know this wonderful story of Lumiere himself making a deal with his very first cameraman, I think his name was Mesquiche, and saying to him, you know, this won't be a long-term job, Mesquiche. This is a flash in the pan, and I'm not even sure we can offer you 3 months, because once the public's tired of it, that'll be the end. Well, he was wrong.
"70 years later, the audiences were still coming, attracted by the space-age effects of films like Stanley Kubrick's 2001. For its designer, Douglas Trumbull, effects can't just dazzle, but have to make the audience feel part of the movie.
I mean, everything in a movie is a special effect to some degree, and I've been fascinated with the idea that movies could be an immersive experience, that you could actually sort of enter into a movie and be part of a movie, and so I sort of got impregnated with that idea by 2001 and working with Stanley Kubrick, and the whole trip sequence at the end of the movie was what I felt was an immersive experience. And I've enjoyed that work very much. So I look for a number of different ways with various film formats and technologies, whether they're rides or movies or 3D, to explore that territory.
Special effects are crossing over from movies to theme rides.
Well, the Back to the Future ride is something I've been working on since 1975, because I developed the first simulator rides.
Okay, lap bars are coming out. Please put on your lap bars here.
You board this car, which is lifted up into a huge sort of planetarium dome ceiling, which is the IMAX dome process. It's an 80-foot diameter hemispherical movie screen onto which is projected this 4-minute trip. The car is mounted on hydraulic actuators which make it move in synchronism with the movie in a very powerful way, like a flight simulator. And so you really seem to be in the movie, surrounded by the movie, and a participant in the movie.
This illusory world of theme park rides is controlled by computers down to the last detail.
I think that the technologies that we have at our disposal now, particularly related to computers and computer imaging, it's possible to make illusions that are absolutely seamlessly perfect, that even a professional cinematographer could look at this finished work and not detect any flaws or any indications that it was a fake or an illusion. There's no matte lines anymore. There's no wires in the shot anymore. And the ability to project a screen in a dome, for instance, and have the movie virtually all around you and add motion or something, you can completely confuse the human nervous system as to what's real and what's not real.
Creating special effects like this green gas escaping in the movie City of Lost Children needed a lot of computer power to make it seem believable. The effect was created by a team of computer designers at the Booth Company in Paris. Real smoke wouldn't take direction, so the designers replaced it with smoke made out of thousands of computer polygons, blurred and matched with the tracking shot in the film. It was the first time anyone had managed to do it. Co-star with the real people is this computerized flea, playing a miniature hitman with a tube of deadly poison.
We made a sort of flea sculpture, a stand-in for the computerized flea. This is what we used during the filming to get the lighting right. And then we mixed the computerized flea with the live-action footage.
The next job was to make the movements of the computerized flea match real objects in the studio. These computer effects lasted 4 minutes on screen, but took months to create. Using computers in the movies brings us images that would otherwise be impossible.
What we have to learn is that the computer isn't an adding machine or a typewriter or a television or a brochure, but the fact that it allows us to model each of these things with which we are previously familiar, that's the significant thing, because what the computer is it's a modeling device.
What this actually means is that a designer can feed, say, the vital statistics of a bird into a computer and can then manipulate its movement to create the illusion of flight. With all this computer modelling, anything is possible. It's hard to know what's real and what isn't. These giant redwoods we filmed in California have gone through the camera lens onto a computer chip and been turned into a bundle of digits. It's now a digital redwood, which you can manipulate in any way you like. If you've seen Close Encounters, The Abyss or Terminator 2, you'll have seen the work of designer Mark Dippe. The real world is what inspires him.
First of all, I would say that nature is the most amazing and complex computer that there is and ever will be. I mean, myself, and I think for most people, you look to nature as for inspiration. Nature is very bizarre. There are animals that have been created that make no sense. You know, there are vistas that you see that you would never have expected. So it is a very directly inspirational place. What the computer allows us to do is to create things that maybe don't exist in nature, but for me, at least, there's no reason to replace nature. I mean, that is not the objective. It's to try and create things that I cannot otherwise see or create. So how would you do that in real life? It's virtually impossible. People tried things like taking transparent sacks and filling them with glycerin and hanging them from wires. Or people had crazy ideas like shooting streams of water stroboscopically and putting them together to make an animation. But it's just really impossible to get that kind of liquid beauty that is possible with water. The same principle is true for the liquid metal man in Terminator 2. It's again this form, this highly detailed reflective chrome surface that's changing shape from a blob to a man. So those kinds of metamorphosing types of characters are things that we could bring to life with computer animation that we could never before. I mean, anyone can use a computer, a monkey, a snake, a human being. It makes no difference. So that's really my point of view. And what is interesting about the computer as an artistic tool, as a craft, is it allows you to create things you could not create before. So I look at it as just really an extremely powerful part of filmmaking, but within 5 or 10 years, it will just be considered a paintbrush. It'll just be a thing that people use to make their art. That it still relies on the human element. It is in no way an automated process. In fact, the funny thing is people think, oh, computer animation, that means the computer does everything for you. But really, it's an extremely painful and tedious process in which you tell the computer what to do with every single point on the screen. It's not really such a facile process at all. It's a very, in my mind, tedious and sometimes awful one.
Tedious and awful it may be, but the money made by computer animation more than makes up for it. Disney's blockbuster Toy Story, the first entirely computer-generated movie, went on to gross $350 million. But will technological progress ever replace us good old-fashioned humans? All very different from traditional animation, which uses pens, paint and plastic sheets. 24 sheets for every second of film. That's 130,000 separate frames for a 90-minute animated feature. With a computer, once you've programmed the basic information into a character, the software lets you control every aspect of it. And now, the man without whom none of Toy Story would have been possible. Ed Catmull of Pixar.
I believe very early on that the way to really make the progress is to recognize that in the end, the art and the story is going to be supreme. And so in building tools, we had to make economic tools for artists and for storytellers. Everything has to be subservient to the story. Initially, the technology wasn't good enough to tell good stories. It was too crude, it didn't look good. Because if you're going to tell a good story, you also want it to look beautiful and engaging. The ultimate goal, and I believe this a long time ago, was to get to the point where people didn't think about the technology.
I'm entering data points on the surface of this clay model, and what I'm attempting to do is get an accurate sampling of the surface, trying to get really, it's just measuring this clay model, and when I'm done, I'll have a mesh of points that will describe what the shape of the dog is. There are several hundred points on the surface of the dog, and they're all stitched together to make a smooth surface that represents what the dog would look like.
These points make up a wireframe, the basic computer model for Scud the dog. The designer can then make the wireframe Scud do any trick he wants, using controls on each part of his body. Computer tools like these are at the heart of this new animation industry. With this software, the animators can begin to put some life into Scud's computer bones and change it as often as the script demands. Their skill makes this bundle of numbers into something that looks almost real. Ruff.
And this is where an animator can breathe life into a character. So once once a character has been modeled, the technical director will set up that character with certain controls at each joint, a neck joint and every shoulder and elbow and every possible joint that you could move. And that then comes over to my computer, where I can sit down and manipulate those joints at will. If I wanted him to look as though he was sort of protecting himself, it would be easy enough to bring his arm up and adjust his hand around to get just the right position. And this is where the animator's eye really comes in, is to be able to get that right position that communicates an idea visually. I can actually change a facial shape, so I can make him sneer a little bit, I can puff his cheek up a little bit. There's a huge combination of facial controls that I can then do to really bring this character to life, because we all really tend to focus on faces and eyes, and that's a really important part of Toy Story, was really making the eyes of the characters feel alive.
The thing that people, I would hope, would understand is that the computer is a very malleable tool. One can't look at the current thing and say, oh, that is the look of computer animation, because it's not. It is going to change dramatically. The compute power that's available now is 200 times what it was 7 years ago. I mean, it's just an astonishing increase of compute power, which is going to increase. And the kinds of looks that we create will get better, will look greater, they'll look more artistic, they'll look artsy, they'll have all sorts of looks to them that the artist will pick. And there will not be a computer look.
I know what my own reaction when I heard what was being done and the way in which it was being done. I was quite sceptical, because I did think that the humanity might well be driven out of the process. But you know, one of the great triumph of Walt Disney was to adapt animation to humanism and create movies that were every bit as humanist as they were brilliantly conceived, brilliantly executed. And this, I think, is the great challenge for the new technologies, not to lose the humanist instincts, the humanist touch. It'll be very, very interesting to see the way in which that develops. In the end, these technologies are and always have been devised to support storytelling, not to supplant it.
And that's just what they're doing at the Media Lab in Boston, where designers are developing interactive 3D characters for children's stories.
I hope he works today.
The idea is to get kids more involved in the stories they're watching.
Well, this is a
a really very simple character that we've developed. We call him Dr. J.T. Puppet. And he's very, very simple. He just follows me around in the world, relying on the vision system to tell him where I am in the world. And then he'll mimic some of my gestures. So if I hold up my hand, he'll hold up his hand. Let's see if I can get him to jump. Sometimes wow, he's really behaving today.
It's very early days, but in research labs like these, you can see the mass-market computer toys of tomorrow. Eventually, kids will step into the screen and play with Silas the dog themselves.
These kinds of systems are encouraging children to be creative and to be imaginative and so on. At the moment, what children mostly do, or the way children experience entertainment and storytelling at the moment, is in a fairly passive way. For example, a lot of very young kids are completely hooked to watching videos, and lots of videos every day. With this kind of system, a child can take a much more active role. For example, the child can become one of the characters in the story and enact that role or play that role. So I would say that it encourages children to be much more creative and imaginative.
What interests these designers is making intelligent creatures that respond to you. Chucking a computerized ball to a computerized dog is the first step.
One of the goals of this work is to be able to build creatures who have the intelligence to tweak their own knobs, if you will. So that all you need to do is say, okay, Silas, look over at that person, or find some food. And then Silas can do all of the things that he needs to do without an animator planning each step. So in all of the work that we do, at every instant, the creature itself is deciding, what should I do next, based on what I see in the world and what I feel.
I guess my basic interest is still that I want to understand intelligence. I want to understand what this phenomenon is. So what I've been doing throughout my sort of career is try to build semi-intelligent systems and try to understand how we can make systems even smarter, how we can make systems learn, how we can make systems communicate, how we can make systems that can understand people, people's goals, even people's emotions, etc. So that's really my passion.
You know, he's seriously, he likes you better. Hey, I created you.
Next on the techno horizon, the cyber TV presenter.
Hey folks, you know what? I am this technological breakthrough. My name is Bros, B-R-O-Z. I'm the first ever live performed, fully rendered, full-bodied, from top to toe, computer animated character.
What you see here on this screen is a character which is completely animated with a mixture of humans and computers. Now you see this actress here wearing our bodysuits. Let me freeze this frame in here. And what you will see is that she is being wired with a set of sensors. These sensors are magnetic sensors, and they allow us to get the data of the movements and play back in real time the motion that she's performing. The result is that the little character is acting exactly the same type of movements that the actress is doing.
Here they come.
To make a character like this one, we use an actor because it is essential to emphasize and to have a stronger movements than the regular movements, so that the movement is captured, is filtered, goes through all the electronics and gets into a natural movements. So the skills of a professional actor are essential for this.
More and more of these cyber presenters are invading television. But it's not all high-tech. To control their expressions, they use traditional puppeteers. On live TV, the characters' lips have to exactly match the words, and only professional puppeteers can do it quickly enough. It's their fingers in wired gloves that control the lips, expressions, and hands. This technology can invent new presenters or bring back some old faces.
Hola i adeu. Bé, senyor patrocinador, fins aquí he arribat.
Groucho Marx is virtually alive and well, telling bad jokes on Spanish TV. It seems like anything's possible.
A computer in itself will never generate art. A computer is just a tool that we give to scriptwriters, to movie makers. If you don't have any story to tell, using a computer will not make it look better. So I think it's just a matter of expressing different feelings and providing creative talents and creative people with additional tools to express themselves.
In Japan, it's the marketing men who've got into cyberspace. They've custom designed their own teen pop star. Meet Kyoko Date. She's 16, loves dancing, chewing gum and boys with earrings. She's already got a fan club, a recording contract, and she'll soon have her own TV show. She looks almost real, but she only exists as a computer program. The Japanese haven't stopped at creating cyber sex kittens to take over the music biz. They even have plans to bring people back from the dead. Dr. Akikazu Takayushi's computer revives dear departed friends and relatives, or even film stars. It's all done from photographs. So instead of a photo of grandma in an album, we'll soon have a virtual grandma on a computer screen.
In this system, we can utilize 2D pictures, video frames, and using that pictures, we can reconstruct 3D face. The modeling system completes the 3D modeling, geometric modeling of the face, but this is just half of the work. We need to introduce behavior or motion or expression to that face, 3D face.
This is where it gets really scary. Imagine what else it can do. You can talk to anybody that ever lived, even some that didn't. In cyberspace, you need never be lonely, ever again. Attach a camera to the computer, and the virtual image will even respond.
So if I move, this agent look for me. So if I go into his scope, he will look at me and smile and bow. And if I move, this agent track me. And this kind of expressions and behavior makes the computer-human interaction richer and richer.
From the land of the living dead to Hollywood. They haven't yet put a virtual actor on the big screen, not unless you count Sylvester Stallone. But the subject of virtual reality is now finding its way into the movies. Ralph Fiennes starred in Strange Days, a brutal and provocative film set in the near future where real-life experiences are traded on video discs.
It was recorded reality, recorded by the eyesight of any person, and then onto a disc, and then being able to be played back by other people so they could have that experience. The Trodes was the playback thing, and they were designed to fit on your head, and then you had to be able to take them off in pain or anguish, and they always got caught in your hair, so you had to cut. My own feeling is that I don't think it's possible to capture technically the essence of the human, an individual human spirit. I don't want to believe that it's going to be true, and I don't think it will be possible to create contrive something that can create the human spirit. I just don't think, or any animal, any living organism. And we can replicate it and be fascinated and be thrilled at our achievement in replicating brilliantly ourselves or an animal or our world. But I think there's an essence. The word spirit keeps coming to my mind, because that is something I don't think a human being can make another spirit. I think that is just there. That exists, you know.
I think the technology is an expression of dreams. I think that we dream about, gee, it'd be nice to fly, it'd be nice to go between point A and point B faster, it'd be nice to save time doing this, and then somewhere that gets into the group mind, and then it comes out as a invention in someone's mind. So I think things are dreamed first and then made later.
Hollywood's current preoccupation with virtual reality is spectacular. But is there a danger that our humanity will be lost in this love affair with technology?
I think we're able to express the conception of much more fantastic things than we were able to before. I think that the digital tools just extend our ability to put that up on the canvas, just as any tools, you know, any technology allows you to do that. So it really is just an extension of ourselves. I think all of the imaginative activity is still basically the same. I don't think the tools have created a new level of human imagination. I think we're just starting to see what human imagination has always been about anyway.
Director Brett Leonard got even more virtual in his next film, Virtuosity.
Lumberman was really about, here is this technology, and kind of educating the viewer to the idea that we could go into subjective computer graphic worlds, where Virtuosity is really more of a psychological cautionary tale. It's about, what if we're able to construct artificial personalities? What does that mean? What kind of mirror are we creating to our own humanity? And I think that technology has a tendency to distill certain things. I think it can distill the best of what we're about. It could also distill the worst of what we're about. And unfortunately, in history, it's mostly been used to distill the worst of what we're about, you know, in the form of weaponry and such, which, of course, warfare has always been the thing that drives most technology in culture to this point anyway. And I think that trying to shift that, trying to make technology be driven by something apart from warfare is one of the things I'm trying to talk about.
But I think that there will be room for both. I mean, there will still be a market for films and television that uses real people and the emotions of real people and all the oddities and fallibility. I mean, I think, you know, we'll still want Mike Leigh to make his films. And I don't think virtual actors will come close to what he achieves. But there'll be other kinds of films with virtual actors, you know, what you're talking about, which I think probably will be very exciting and intriguing.
Virtual reality is here to stay as part of the Hollywood entertainment machine. But beyond the world of movies, it's reaching into all sorts of other areas. According to designers, making everything virtual and 3D will change our lives. Inside this helmet are two small TVs wired to a computer. The helmet senses your body movements and shows you a 3D computer-generated picture. So you believe you're actually in this car. As you move your head, the computer shows you the image from your point of view. It's changed the lives of the military. Now they can fly virtual missions, and if they crash, no one gets hurt, and they don't lose a multi-million-pound jet. It's even changed the work of architects. This is a 3D plan of a proposed university in Kuwait, which the architect can fly his client around before the builders move in. You can even go on a virtual safari, and if the animals get out of hand, you can switch them off. The designers of virtual reality are working on making VR into a big leisure activity. The graphics are still pretty crude, but the simulations feel increasingly convincing for the players. Big business is investing billions in technology that will bring VR to the office and the home. One of the pioneers is Sun Microsystems.
In your living room, when it's time to watch the soccer match, the soccer field is right on your coffee table. And there are all the little players kicking the little balls around. right on that table, and you didn't leave the real world. If your child is crying, you can look over and see what's going on. You're not attached to anything. And this would be much more freedom and much more interaction than we have in today's, much more closeted worlds.
Soon, instead of looking at a TV screen, you'll have it all around you. You may have only just got used to the VCR, but if you believe this lot, get ready for VR.
I think we're going to find we've already all been working in 3D worlds for many years by then. It'll be as natural as we walk around streets right now in the real world. We'll be used to walking through 3D yellow pages, 3D different ways of interacting with information. More and more of our entertainment will be 3D. What will start changing is the workplace will change as well. That more of the tasks that we do right now on those flat screens, anything other than words, if it would be better done in 3D, we'll be doing it that way. We are now in 3D on this workstation, moving through it dynamically in real time. We have a number of different controlling devices for being able to interact in 3 dimensions. And we're doing in tracking here where automatically these glasses are controlling what portion of the image is being seen.
What the glasses do is they cover over one eye at a time, really fast, and then the monitor shows me one picture and then another really fast, so that for each eye I have a different picture. So it's just like looking at things in reality. For each eye you have a different picture. If you close one eye, you see one thing, you close the other eye, you see another. So I can see this in 3 dimensions. And also the glasses have a special device on them that tell the computer where my head is. So the computer also adjusts for what position my head is in. Sort of like when you move your head around, you can see something different. And if you move your head somewhere else, you see another image. So it really feels like you're there with the object that you're working on,
As we look back and forth, the system here is tracking where the viewer's head is, and it's dynamically changing the scene in the same way that you see very much like a hologram. But that's good for viewing. How do we actually create and manipulate things here? Well, we've got a couple different devices here. We have a 3D mouse or wand, and we can draw and change things with this. We're also experimenting with a new device, which is a 3D glove. And just like now we have both mice and trackballs, in the 3D future we're going to have many different comfortable interaction metaphors.
This is a 3-dimensional shape here, not just a 2-dimensional shape. And I can then give it an eyebrow here, or anything I want. And then I could duplicate that, for example, and flip it.
While these early prototype devices might look crude, and while we haven't yet worked out what to do with them, the boffins are convinced that this VR technology has a future.
Something like that. And then I can look around and see, and if I have 3D on, I move my own head around like this.
We can finally take virtual reality seriously. This is serious entertainment media. It is being seriously used in industrial applications, in medical applications, in artistic applications.
Leave the techno-evangelists, and will soon be replacing the physical world with a virtual one. They may want us to take it seriously, but there are some people out there who are worried about what it might do to us. Writers like Mark Sluker think of themselves as the speed bump on this information superhighway.
Human beings evolved in the physical world over countless millennia. Genetically, we're programmed to respond to our landscape in particular ways, to respond to face-to-face communication. When you divorce us from the physical world, when you suspend us in this strange non-place, cyberspace, you're asking us to do things that we're not prepared for, simply. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't use them in some limited way, but to argue, as some of the so-called techno-evangelists are arguing, that we can simply inhabit this alternate space altogether, that we can leave the physical world behind, thank you very much, and go elsewhere, I don't believe that for a second, and many people would be uncomfortable with that notion as well.
Back to the Hollywood entertainment machine, where big money is being invested into the creation of theme ride spin-offs from movies.
began the concept of Jurassic Park the ride while Jurassic Park the film was in production. Even before it came out, it's not that I was anticipating a big success, but it was such a natural for, you know, Universal Studios, Orlando, and Hollywood, because of what it's about. The movie is about basically a theme park that goes amiss, and we thought it was. At one point, somebody said, "What are the theme parks more successful than the movie?" And I said, "That could happen."
The new theme parks mix the best of both worlds, physical and virtual, with brushes, paint, and hard graft. But the creatures and the rides are all computer designed and operated. Cyberspace is just below the surface.
This is really what virtual reality is all about. It's not about something you put on your head and see a condensed image on 3 sides of you. This really is a chance to, you know, 3-dimensionally live the movie and ride the movie. Cyberspace technology is full of promises. It takes us away from the real world into all sorts of electronic and computer-controlled worlds. But are they worlds we'd really like to live in?
If you're walking across a landscape at whatever it is, 5 or 6 miles an hour, you're experiencing a particular kind of reality. If you're in a car at 70 miles an hour, you're already distanced, you're already removed from the landscape around you. At supersonic speeds, say in an airplane or whatever, the landscape is as unreal as a painting. Now, it seems to me that in a very short time, over the last 2 or 3 generations, we've moved from that face-to-face direct contact with the world around us to increasingly unreal worlds. The computer is sort of beyond the supersonic transport. It removes us entirely. We're in a virtual world, an entirely synthetic place.
You're in my world now!
The advances in what we're able to do as human beings is so rapid, we need somebody to say, hey, let's put on the brakes, at least for a second, and look at what we're doing. Now, that doesn't mean that a lot of the negative potentials aren't going to happen, but it also, I think, stimulates thought, and especially the younger viewers, about, well, maybe I don't want it to go that way. Maybe I can do something in my own life that you know, skews it in a different direction. Movies have done that for me.
The multi-billion-dollar entertainment industry has come a long way since the first flickering images made the very first cinema audience believe that what they saw coming towards them was real.
The history of the last 150 years is unfortunate in that it tends to divide us up by means of the technological manner in which we deliver the message. And the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, we're all trying to do, I hope, one thing, which is to deliver a broadly humanist and inclusive message to a large number of people, which we think in some way, shape or form might be of benefit and might help them steer themselves through an ever increasingly difficult lives.